Chapter 109. The sound of grotesque screams from a god, crushed and slammed into the ground, echoed madly through the forest. Yet, the man who had brought the deity low gazed upon the fallen being with an expression devoid of emotion. Genara, who had been staring blankly at him, at a man radiating something vast and divine, finally heard his voice. "Pull yourself together." She gasped, responding to the words of the man. "No, Marquis Palacio. Can you stand?" "Why, yes." "Then head down to the altar now. Your sister will be waiting for you." "But, what about you?" she stammered. Without a word, he bent down and picked up the frozen apple she had dropped earlier, handing it back to her. "Naturally, I'll handle that and come down later," he replied curtly, shifting his gaze as if there was no more to say. "Genara! Sister!" Circle, who had been waiting anxiously below the altar, rushed up at the sight of her sister. "Truly, thank you so much," Circle exclaimed. "Take her down quickly," Marquis ordered. After Circle hurriedly led her sister away, he turned his attention back to the colossal, thrashing form of the Basiliora, the receiver. "Damn, I knew it was big, but this is ridiculously massive," he thought, clutching his widely beating heart. If not for Deus, Genara and he might have both been devoured. But that thought lasted only a moment. Marquis pulled a potion of magic power from his belt and downed it in one gulp, his eyes fixed on the iron bars embedded in the roof of the creature's mouth. The ambush succeeded, so the first phase of the plan is complete. The important part starts now, he mused, glancing downward toward the altar. The receiver Basiliora bellowed in fury, its monstrous voice shaking the ground. The sound was so intense it seemed to pierce the body, as if icy raindrops were pelting every nerve. What are you?" A voice resonated in his mind, a guttural yet intelligent tone belonging to Basiliora, a being now both divine and sentient. Its rage was palpable, but beneath it lingered fear. A faint trace of the emotion threaded through the beast's furious voice. With a thunderous crash, the creature coiled itself around the altar once more, lunging upward with a force that shattered its edges. Its ascent was relentless, almost enough to make alone feel a chill. But the effort was in vain. Before it could reach the top, violet threads had wrapped tightly around its massive form, dragging it back to the ground. "You think I'll just let you reach Marquis?" Deus's voice rang out as he struck the creature's head, driving it back down. With a deafening crash, the thunder serpent god fell to the earth again. Reinhard was sure of one thing: Marquis Palacio was utterly insane. Every word that came out of the man's mouth was the kind of madness no rational person could utter. Or so he thought, until he saw it with his own eyes. "Ha!" Reinhard stared at the distant scene, unable to close his gaping mouth. There, a godlike being, the colossal thunder serpent, was plummeting to the ground. A human bringing down a god. The sight was so awe-inspiring it sent shivers through even Reinhard's jaded heart. And yet, "That's Deus," he muttered internally. It had been so long since he'd seen him. Deus had grown far stronger than Reinhard could have imagined. With a thunderous impact, Reinhard saw Deus get struck by the creature's massive tail, sent flying through the forest. Trees shattered in his wake as he crashed through the terrain. As if struck by a colossal spell, a cloud of dust rose noisily despite the rain, hinting at the sheer force of the attack. Even for a sword master, such a blow would be impossible to endure unscathed. In fact, it was an attack of such magnitude that it could have been instantly fatal. Yet, Deus, standing before his eyes, appeared almost comically unharmed, save for being coated in mud and dust. A unique ability, perhaps, Reinhard mused, letting out a faint, hollow laugh as he pieced together what Deus had done. In that moment of divine attack, Deus had defended himself by cocooning his body in his signature threads, his unique ability absorbing the brunt of the assault. As Reinhard realized this, Basiliora, the receiver, roared in fury and charged madly at Deus, its monstrous form wreaking havoc across the earth. Crash! The very act of its crawling across the ground unleashed a cacophony, as if heralding a natural disaster. The receiver lunged forward with its colossal body, attempting to crush Deus outright. But in the next instant, Deus stopped the oncoming calamity. Using his violet threads, he lashed them around nearby trees, weaving them into an impromptu shield. Wrapping his body in his threads, Deus blocked the creature's advance and drew his sword. With a swift slash, he redirected the path of the monstrous force. Thud! Basiliora hurtled sideways, crashing into a massive cliff, far from the altar. The impact sent chills down Reinhard's spine. Just how much has he grown? Reinhard couldn't suppress his amazement. He had believed himself to have grown considerably, yet the figure he had always aimed to surpass had ascended far beyond reach. When the receiver let out another ear-piercing scream and charged again, Reinhard could only grimace. Despite the initial damage to its upper jaw from Marquis Palacio's first strike, Basiliora had sustained little significant harm. Once more, it barreled forward, not merely toward Deus, but directly at the altar. Deus prepared to block the onslaught again, but this time, he seemed visibly strained. TSK. Clicking his tongue, Reinhard moved with a flash of speed, positioning himself directly in front of Deus. "I was saving this as a final move," he muttered under his breath, readying himself for the monstrous charge. He assumed his stance, right foot forward, left foot back. His right hand gripped his sword's hilt, poised high, while his left hand steadied the blade. Click! The sound of his blade snapping free from its sheath rang out, and Reinhard clenched his teeth as he poured strength into his right foot. Secret technique. With an explosive burst of energy, Reinhard slashed his sword downward, unleashing a move he'd honed in the depths of the jungle. Meteor sword. Boom! The ground itself buckled under the pressure of his blade, amplifying the gravity in the area by several dozen times. The earth shattered. The trees splintered. The stones cracked. Even the rain itself seemed to hold midair before being crushed by the overwhelming force. Under this immense gravitational pull, the massive receiver was slammed into the ground, its monstrous advance completely halted. "Everything's ready. Proceed according to plan," the voice of Marquis Palacio concluded, signaling the culmination of the battle. Alone observed the scene with a mix of awe and worry. "I didn't ask them to go this far." From the start, Alone had anticipated Basiliora climbing toward the altar, and his plan only accounted for Deus blocking the creature's charge once or twice. He had never imagined anyone could hold off such a catastrophic force beyond that. Yet Deus had done precisely that, fending off the attack of a beast that had fed on faith for ages, perhaps not a true god, but at least worthy of being called a guardian deity. What made this feat even more remarkable was Basiliora's divine nature, which diminished damage from non-divine beings. Blocking such a creature was no small task. Thanks to Deus's efforts, Alone had completed all preparations with ease. Glancing around, he noticed Deus and Reinhard had already retreated from the battlefield. With a sigh of relief, he muttered softly to himself. "Phew." Letting out a sigh, Alone gazed at Basiliora, the receiver, as it charged toward the altar once more. Its enraged shrieks pierced the air, a wordless roar born of frustration after having its attacks thwarted repeatedly. The sheer ferocity of its charge embodied pure disaster. Yet, watching this calamity unfold, Alone calmly formed a series of hand seals. "1 point," he intoned, his voice steady. The time Alone had spent stalling since his first strike against Basiliora served 3 critical purposes. First, mana recovery. His severely limited mana reserves meant that even a single spell could nearly deplete him. He needed time to replenish his strength. Expansion, he muttered, moving to the second step. This phase involved severing the flow of faith directed at Basiliora and stalling for the debuffs cast by the Thunder Serpent tribe to take full effect. While Basiliora's vast reservoir of accumulated faith shielded it from significant harm, the tribe's ritualistic debuffs would undeniably tip the scales. Finally, vibration. The last step relied on his artifact, the Necklace of the Eye-Eater, which identified Basiliora's weaknesses. This final preparation complete, Alone turned his attention back to the colossal being as it began scaling the altar. Destruction. With that single word, Alone unleashed his spell upon the altar. Boom! The massive structure, already riddled with cracks, collapsed with an earth-shattering roar. Splash! From within, a surge of water burst forth, engulfing everything in its path. The deluge swept away the surrounding landscape and consumed half of Basiliora's enormous body in its torrent. Despite the chaos unfolding, Alone remained composed. This was all part of the plan, a scenario he had encountered countless times while navigating psychedelia. In the game, triggering a jungle flood required toppling one of the many rain altars, and now, reality mirrored that event. He looked down at the unfolding scene. Everything was ready. Basiliora was now under the effects of the Thunder Serpent tribe's debuffs, half submerged in the floodwaters, and impaled through its mouth by an enormous magically reforged spear, a lightning rod created with the tribe's assistance. Only one task remained: deliver the final blow. "A ray of thunder," Alone murmured. At that moment, Deus and Reinhard, who had taken refuge on a high point in the jungle safe from the flood, witnessed the scene unfold. Under the dim, ashen skies, a dazzling light erupted from Marquis Palacio standing at the heart of it all. The brilliance seemed to cleave the world in two. What the hell? Reinhard cursed, his face etched with shock. Deus, filled with renewed awe, gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, unable to look away. And then it happened. Behind Marquis, a pair of glowing eyes appeared as if etched into the fabric of reality itself. As the grey heavens parted, a radiant light descended, pure, blinding, and unrelenting, splitting the stormy skies with divine brilliance. Chapter 110. Alone exhausted every possible means to deliver a decisive blow to the receiver, Basiliora. With that, there was nothing more he could do. He had already used up everything he prepared, leaving his mana core pitifully empty. And yet, despite it all, Basiliora, the receiver, was still alive. The being twisted his body amidst the rubble of the collapsed altar, emitting a grotesque roar. Alone clicked his tongue in exasperation, though his expression remained impassive. Of course, Alone had never expected Basiliora to go down easily. The faith bestowed upon him by the Thunder Serpent tribe had granted Basiliora the stature of a guardian deity. If I didn't possess divinity myself, I wouldn't have even dared attempt this, Alone thought. The cornerstone of Alone's plan was one crucial factor: Alone himself possessed a rank. The attacks of those without a divine rank only inflicted diminished damage on gods. Therefore, Alone believed he could deal meaningful damage to Basiliora, despite his divine nature. Though he didn't fully understand why he himself had a divine rank, it didn't matter. This simple fact meant that he could harm Basiliora and subdue him. As per Alone's plan, Basiliora was defeated, though not killed, and now lay subdued. The Real challenge begins now. Boom, rumble. As the massive form of Basiliora writhed madly in front of him, Alone carefully pulled out a ring from his inner pocket. It was the crimson, glowing ring he had received from the Archmage Heinkel. Without hesitation, Alone slid it onto his middle finger and turned his gaze toward Basiliora. Basiliora, receiver of power, you now have two choices. Kill me, destroy me. Kill me. Destroy me. Basiliora thrashed violently, sending debris scattering around him. Yet, Alone remained calm, continuing his words. Choice 1, become my servant. Choice 2, die here and now. What will it be? It was a composed inquiry, yet Basiliora convulsed furiously in response. Do you think I will ever lower myself to be your servant? Just because you re-emboldened by your backing, don't think for race can die will ever serve moment. Do you think I would ever lower myself to be your servant? Just because you're emboldened by your backing, do not think for a second I would ever serve a mere human. In that case, your only remaining choice is death. Doit, kill me, do you think closing to human would strip of me don't make my law. Do it. Kill me. Do you think losing to a human would strip me of my honor? Don't make me laugh. The negotiation broke down instantly, but that was of no consequence. In fact, this was precisely what Alone had hoped for. Well then, let me share something interesting. What nonsense are you spouting, no? What nonsense are you spouting now? Your opinion doesn't actually matter much. Whether you refuse or agree, either way, you will belong to me. With those words, Alone thrust the crimson ring forward as if he had been waiting for this moment. In accordance with the Great Pact of Calgunias, I hereby claim dominion over the defeated. The words had scarcely left his lips when the ring erupted with a fierce crimson light. What is this? What is this? Basiliora's massive body began to be sucked into the ring. Boom! Crash! Crack! As the colossal form of Basiliora was gradually absorbed into the ring, the altar beneath him crumbled further into the abyss. A faint, satisfied smile appeared behind Alone's otherwise indifferent expression. Good. Everything went as planned. The reason Alone had offered Basiliora a choice was never to negotiate or grant him agency. It was solely to elicit a declaration of defeat. The Calgunia's Pact ring, gifted to Alone by Heinkel, had the power to enslave the defeated, binding them to the wearer as a servant akin to a familiar. Though, in truth, Alone had originally intended to use the ring to capture and enslave a young dragon in the region Heinkel had mentioned, not Basiliora. This wasn't a game, so Alone had been searching for a familiar to place within the Calgunia's Pact ring. Upon learning that he possessed divinity himself, he ultimately chose Basiliora as his target. Phew. Alone gazed at the ring, which had absorbed Basiliora's massive body in mere seconds. The once plain crimson ring now bore the intricate design of a serpent. As Alone studied the newly engraved symbol, he allowed himself a small, nearly imperceptible smile of satisfaction. Phew. Letting go of all tension, he lay back and relaxed. The once ashen sky was now filled with countless stars. It's a success, he murmured, celebrating the completion of his plan. His body felt utterly drained, yet it wasn't an unpleasant sensation. 3 days had passed since Alone absorbed Basiliora into the Calgunia's pact ring, turning him into a familiar. Truly, thank you so much. The chief of the Thunder Serpent tribe, wise Ashgull, bowed deeply in gratitude. Alone shook his head lightly. There's no need to thank me that much. I had my own goals to achieve. No, we must. Thanks to you, we, the Thunder Serpent tribe, have been freed from Basiliora's grasp and have regained our freedom. Ashgull's wrinkled eyes crinkled with genuine joy. After a brief exchange of words, Alone spoke again. Then I'll stay for just one more day. However long you wish to remain, we of the Thunder Serpent tribe will do everything to ensure your comfort. Please, don't worry. Alone stepped outside, his thoughts turning inward. Truthfully, I'd prefer to leave this jungle immediately. Having subdued Basiliora, Alone no longer had any reason to remain. However, he decided to stay one more day, primarily because of Reinhard and Deus. More specifically, because of Reinhard. He blocked Basiliora's attack head-on, so it's only natural. Though Deus seemed fatigued, he wasn't severely hindered. Reinhard, on the other hand, had been in a completely groggy state since the previous day. Perhaps he overused his abilities. As Alone was lost in thought, a voice interrupted him. Hello. Looking up, he saw a young girl bowing deeply in front of him. Well, I'm. The girl awkwardly began to introduce herself, but Alone soon recognized who she was. Are you feeling better? Why, yes. You were caught in the rain quite a bit. At his question, the girl hesitated, unable to respond immediately. She's fine, answered another voice. It was her older sister, Circle, who stepped forward from behind. Her face bore a bright smile, something unimaginable when they first met. She glanced affectionately at her younger sister before bowing deeply to Alone. Thank you so much. Didn't you already thank me yesterday? Alone recalled how Circle had repeatedly bowed to him on their way back to the Thunder Serpent tribe. Even if I thanked you 100 times, it wouldn't be enough for what you've done for us. Thank you so much. Once again, she bowed deeply, leaving Alone slightly flustered. If you ever find yourself in trouble, please seek me out. I will do everything in my power to help you. I appreciate that. Oh, and tonight, we are holding a feast. Please join us, it's essentially in your honor. After delivering her message, Circle guided her still flustered younger sister away. As they walked off, their happiness was evident. The sisters exchanged looks of pure joy, their faces radiant with contentment. Alone smiled inwardly. A deep sense of pride and fulfillment welled up within him. The trust Alone had gained from the Thunder Serpent tribe's chief gave him yet another potential advantage. Perhaps I can ask for a favor regarding that later, he mused as he returned to his temporary lodgings. The sky, which had been overcast since his arrival, was now clear, with the sun shining brightly. The experimental subjects created by Duke Comelin were formidable beings, each one powerful in its own right. This was no coincidence. The countless experiments conducted for the Duke's research on abyssal entities had produced these beings. Most of them, save for a rare few like Carmine, had once been renowned warriors in the allied kingdoms. Moreover, only those who had fully withstood the transformation into abyssal entities were deemed worthy of being called subjects by the Duke. In other words, these subjects were strong individuals who had fully absorbed the essence of abyssal power. Their strength was undeniable, and they knew it. But arrogance was a dangerous thing. Even as they arrived in the jungle on orders to assassinate Marquis Palacio, they refrained from attacking immediately, even after locating him in the Thunder Serpent tribe's territory. Instead, they hid themselves meticulously, waiting for the perfect moment, the moment Duke Comelin had deemed optimal for carrying out the assassination. That moment was supposed to come tonight. Until things went horribly wrong. Ooh. Experimental Subject 1 coughed up blood, staring ahead in disbelief. The sight before him was incomprehensible, the mangled corpses of over 15 experimental subjects, beings as powerful as himself. What is this? Even as blood streamed from his abdomen, Subject 1's mind raced to make sense of the situation. But no matter how hard he tried to recall what had happened, only two scenes remained in his memory. The first was Subject 3's head inexplicably exploding the moment he declared they would proceed with the assassination that night. The second was that a despair now spread before him, the sight of all the experimental subjects, himself included, slaughtered. As Subject 1 stood there, dazed and bleeding, his eyes caught a figure walking calmly through the blood-soaked battlefield. A girl with a long horn protruding from her forehead and a confident smirk on her lips. Having single-handedly annihilated the experimental subjects, the girl glanced briefly at the stunned man as if appraising him. Then, with a complete lack of interest, she kicked his face with brutal force. Splat! A spray of blood accompanied the destruction of his head, which fell unceremoniously to the ground. The girl, seemingly finished with her work, turned and began to walk away. A man appeared beside her as she left. "Boss, why did you bother stepping in yourself? You could have just sent the underlings to handle this." The man, whose blue skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, was twice the size of the dark-haired girl. His question lingered as they walked. The girl responded curtly, "Just felt like it. Just felt like it. Yeah. The blue-skinned man turned his gaze toward the Thunder Serpent tribe's village, more specifically to the banquet taking place among its people. His eyes locked on one particular individual. "Boss." "What? Can I ask you something?" "What is it?" "What's so special about that human that you'd step in personally and even dirty your hands?" His voice carried frustration, and his brow furrowed deeply as he struggled to understand. The girl hummed thoughtfully, as though carefully choosing her words. After a moment of deliberation, she spoke. "Oh." Drawing out the sound, she finally answered, "It's that." "That?" "Yeah, that." "What is that?" "Justification." "Pardon?" The girl, no, the Queen of the 100 Demons, smiled wickedly as her eerie eyes gleamed faintly. "That human is my one and only justification." Her smile deepened, her gaze filled with a mischievous delight, as though everything about this was immensely entertaining. Chapter 110. Alone exhausted every possible means to deliver a decisive blow to the receiver, Basiliora. With that, there was nothing more he could do. He had already used up everything he prepared, leaving his mana core pitifully empty. And yet, despite it all... Basiliora, the receiver, was still alive. The being twisted his body amidst the rubble of the collapsed altar, emitting a grotesque roar. Alone clicked his tongue in exasperation, though his expression remained impassive. Of course, Alone had never expected Basiliora to go down easily. The faith bestowed upon him by the Thunder Serpent tribe had granted Basiliora the stature of a guardian deity. If I didn't possess divinity myself, I wouldn't have even dared attempt this, Alone thought. The cornerstone of Alone's plan was one crucial factor: Alone himself possessed a rank. The attacks of those without a divine rank only inflicted diminished damage on gods. Therefore, Alone believed he could deal meaningful damage to Basiliora, despite his divine nature. Though he didn't fully understand why he himself had a divine rank, it didn't matter. This simple fact meant that he could harm Basiliora and subdue him. As per Alone's plan, Basiliora was defeated, though not killed, and now lay subdued. The Real challenge begins now. Boom, rumble. As the massive form of Basiliora writhed madly in front of him, Alone carefully pulled out a ring from his inner pocket. It was the crimson, glowing ring he had received from the Archmage Heinkel. Without hesitation, Alone slid it onto his middle finger and turned his gaze toward Basiliora. Basiliora, receiver of power, you now have two choices. Kill me, destroy me. Kill me. Destroy me. Basiliora thrashed violently, sending debris scattering around him. Yet, Alone remained calm, continuing his words. Choice 1, become my servant. Choice 2, die here and now. What will it be? It was a composed inquiry, yet Basiliora convulsed furiously in response. Do you think I will ever lower myself to be your servant? Just because you re-emboldened by your backing, don't think for race can die will ever serve moment. Do you think I would ever lower myself to be your servant? Just because you're emboldened by your backing, do not think for a second I would ever serve a mere human. In that case, your only remaining choice is death. Doit, kill me, do I think closing to human would strip mov mina, don't make my law. Do it. Kill me. Do you think losing to a human would strip me of my honor? Don't make me laugh. The negotiation broke down instantly, but that was of no consequence. In fact, this was precisely what Alone had hoped for. Well then, let me share something interesting. What nonsense are you spouting, no? What nonsense are you spouting now? Your opinion doesn't actually matter much. Whether you refuse or agree, either way, you will belong to me. With those words, Alone thrust the crimson ring forward as if he had been waiting for this moment. In accordance with the Great Pact of Calgunias, I hereby claim dominion over the defeated. The words had scarcely left his lips when the ring erupted with a fierce crimson light. What is this? What is this? Basiliora's massive body began to be sucked into the ring. Boom! Crash! Crack! As the colossal form of Basiliora was gradually absorbed into the ring, the altar beneath him crumbled further into the abyss. A faint, satisfied smile appeared behind Alone's otherwise indifferent expression. Good. Everything went as planned. The reason Alone had offered Basiliora a choice was never to negotiate or grant him agency. It was solely to elicit a declaration of defeat. The Calgunias Pact ring, gifted to Alone by Heinkel, had the power to enslave the defeated, binding them to the wearer as a servant akin to a familiar. Though, in truth, Alone had originally intended to use the ring to capture and enslave a young dragon in the region Heinkel had mentioned, not Basiliora. This wasn't a game, so Alone had been searching for a familiar to place within the Calgunias Pact ring. Upon learning that he possessed divinity himself, he ultimately chose Basiliora as his target. Phew! Alone gazed at the ring, which had absorbed Basiliora's massive body in mere seconds. The once plain crimson ring now bore the intricate design of a serpent. As Alone studied the newly engraved symbol, he allowed himself a small, nearly imperceptible smile of satisfaction. Phew! Letting go of all tension, he lay back and relaxed. The once ashen sky was now filled with countless stars. It's a success, he murmured, celebrating the completion of his plan. His body felt utterly drained, yet it wasn't an unpleasant sensation. 3 days had passed since Alone absorbed Basiliora into the Calgunias Pact ring, turning him into a familiar. Truly, thank you so much. The chief of the Thunder Serpent tribe, wise Ashgull, bowed deeply in gratitude. Alone shook his head lightly. There's no need to thank me that much. I had my own goals to achieve. No, we must. Thanks to you, we, the Thunder Serpent tribe, have been freed from Basiliora's grasp and have regained our freedom. Ashgull's wrinkled eyes crinkled with genuine joy. After a brief exchange of words, Alone spoke again. Then I'll stay for just 1 more day. However long you wish to remain, we of the Thunder Serpent tribe will do everything to ensure your comfort. Please, don't worry. Alone stepped outside, his thoughts turning inward. Truthfully, I'd prefer to leave this jungle immediately. Having subdued Basiliora, Alone no longer had any reason to remain. However, he decided to stay 1 more day, primarily because of Reinhard and Deus. More specifically, because of Reinhard. He blocked Basiliora's attack head-on, so it's only natural. Though Deus seemed fatigued, he wasn't severely hindered. Reinhard, on the other hand, had been in a completely groggy state since the previous day. Perhaps he overused his abilities. As Alone was lost in thought, a voice interrupted him. Hello. Looking up, he saw a young girl bowing deeply in front of him. Well, I'm. The girl awkwardly began to introduce herself, but Alone soon recognized who she was. Are you feeling better? Why, yes. You were caught in the rain quite a bit. At his question, the girl hesitated, unable to respond immediately. She's fine, answered another voice. It was her older sister, Circle, who stepped forward from behind. Her face bore a bright smile, something unimaginable when they first met. She glanced affectionately at her younger sister before bowing deeply to Alone. Thank you so much. Didn't you already thank me yesterday? Alone recalled how Circle had repeatedly bowed to him on their way back to the Thunder Serpent tribe. Even if I thanked you 100 times, it wouldn't be enough for what you've done for us. Thank you so much. Once again, she bowed deeply, leaving Alone slightly flustered. If you ever find yourself in trouble, please seek me out. I will do everything in my power to help you. I appreciate that. Oh, and tonight, we are holding a feast. Please join us, it's essentially in your honor. After delivering her message, Circle guided her still flustered younger sister away. As they walked off, their happiness was evident. The sisters exchanged looks of pure joy, their faces radiant with contentment. Alone smiled inwardly. A deep sense of pride and fulfillment welled up within him. The trust Alone had gained from the Thunder Serpent tribe's chief gave him yet another potential advantage. Perhaps I can ask for a favor regarding that later, he mused as he returned to his temporary lodgings. The sky, which had been overcast since his arrival, was now clear, with the sun shining brightly. The experimental subjects created by Duke Comelin were formidable beings, each one powerful in its own right. This was no coincidence. The countless experiments conducted for the Duke's research on abyssal entities had produced these beings. Most of them, save for a rare few like Carmine, had once been renowned warriors in the allied kingdoms. Moreover, only those who had fully withstood the transformation into abyssal entities were deemed worthy of being called subjects by the Duke. In other words, these subjects were strong individuals who had fully absorbed the essence of abyssal power. Their strength was undeniable, and they knew it. But arrogance was a dangerous thing. Even as they arrived in the jungle on orders to assassinate Marquis Palacio, they refrained from attacking immediately, even after locating him in the Thunder Serpent tribe's territory. Instead, they hid themselves meticulously, waiting for the perfect moment, the moment Duke Comelin had deemed optimal for carrying out the assassination. That moment was supposed to come tonight. Until things went horribly wrong. Ooh! Experimental Subject 1 coughed up blood, staring ahead in disbelief. The sight before him was incomprehensible, the mangled corpses of over 15 experimental subjects, beings as powerful as himself. What is this? Even as blood streamed from his abdomen, Subject 1's mind raced to make sense of the situation. But no matter how hard he tried to recall what had happened, only two scenes remained in his memory. The first was Subject 3's head inexplicably exploding the moment he declared they would proceed with the assassination that night. The second was that a despair now spread before him, the sight of all the experimental subjects, himself included, slaughtered. As Subject 1 stood there, dazed and bleeding, his eyes caught a figure walking calmly through the blood-soaked battlefield. A girl with a long horn protruding from her forehead and a confident smirk on her lips. Having single-handedly annihilated the experimental subjects, the girl glanced briefly at the stunned man as if appraising him. Then, with a complete lack of interest, she kicked his face with brutal force. Splat! A spray of blood accompanied the destruction of his head, which fell unceremoniously to the ground. The girl, seemingly finished with her work, turned and began to walk away. A man appeared beside her as she left. Boss, why did you bother stepping in yourself? You could have just sent the underlings to handle this. The man, whose blue skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, was twice the size of the dark-haired girl. His question lingered as they walked. The girl responded curtly, just felt like it. Just felt like it. Yeah. The blue-skinned man turned his gaze toward the Thunder Serpent tribe's village, more specifically to the banquet taking place among its people. His eyes locked on one particular individual. Boss. What? Can I ask you something? What is it? What's so special about that human that you'd step in personally and even dirty your hands? His voice carried frustration, and his brow furrowed deeply as he struggled to understand. The girl hummed thoughtfully, as though carefully choosing her words. After a moment of deliberation, she spoke. Oh. Drawing out the sound, she finally answered, it's that. That. Yeah, that. What is that? Justification. Pardon. The girl, no, the Queen of the 100 Demons, smiled wickedly as her eerie eyes gleamed faintly. That human is my one and only justification. Her smile deepened, her gaze filled with a mischievous delight, as though everything about this was immensely entertaining. Chapter 111. The banquet that began at night turned out to be much better than Alone had imagined. Set between ancient ruins and a massive tree under the starlit sky and the Milky Way, the banquet exuded a charm that needed no embellishment. First, the food was delicious. And second, the food was absolutely delicious. It's good, Alone muttered, staring down at the piece of meat he had just been eating, his expression one of mild surprise. The dish, which had a rich, nutty flavor with a hint of subtle sweetness, reminded him of crab meat and fit his taste perfectly. Wow, this is really good. Evan, seated nearby, exclaimed in agreement. Indeed, Alone nodded, prompting a woman holding 2 children from the tribe to smile and speak up. Well, it's an honor to hear that from our tribe's hero. I made that dish myself. Really? It's very well made. It's all thanks to the quality of the ingredients. What is this made of? It's made with stormvi. At that moment, Alone froze mid-chew. Storm, 6? Yes. Wait, the stormvi. Yes, that very stormvi. The confirmation made Alone want to spit out the contents of his mouth. In this jungle, a stormvi referred to an insect resembling a giant cockroach. I see. Oh my, are you not eating anymore? I think I may have overindulged a bit, Alone replied, cautiously setting the stormvi meat aside and glancing to his side. Evan, on the other hand, seemed to have made it his mission to consume every last piece of stormvi meat at the banquet, his head practically buried in his plate. Alone hesitated, wondering whether to say something, but eventually chose to remain silent. Once again, he was reminded that there were times when ignorance was bliss. He excused himself and sat near the ruins, gazing at the star-filled sky. The Milky Way above was breathtaking, outshining even the moonlight that bathed the ground in its glow. Then, a voice called out. Marquis Palacio. HM. Alone turned his gaze to see Reinhard approaching slowly, having seemingly regained some mobility. Reinhard, too, was chewing on a piece of stormvi meat, looking as though he genuinely enjoyed it. Tasty, isn't it? Alone asked. This? Yes, it's quite delicious. A taste I've never encountered back in the kingdom. Of course, he hadn't. It would have been stranger if such a dish were available there. By the way, could I ask you something? Reinhard scratched his head before speaking. Go ahead. Do you know anything about the 100 Ghosts? The 100 Ghosts? You mean the northern region? Yes. I know of it, but that's about it. Just know of it? No connections or anything like that. Connections? Unfortunately, this is my first time in the jungle. At Alone's response, Reinhard seemed to accept it, nodding thoughtfully. I see. What's this about? It's nothing. Just a bit of confusion on my part. With that, Reinhard turned away, clearly having said all he intended to. His habit of delivering cryptic remarks and then leaving without further explanation was entirely in character, so Alone simply nodded in acknowledgement. Watching as Reinhard resumed eating stormvi meat while walking away, Alone couldn't help but feel slightly unsettled. It wasn't that his stomach turned, but the sight was a bit uncomfortable. After some time, when his stomach had settled, Alone decided to return to the banquet in search of other food. However, as he arrived, he noticed people gathering in one place and began to walk toward them. Yes, the Marquis stood his ground before the great god without retreating a single step. Instead, he climbed upon it and drove a spear into its head. Oh. Alone realized that Deus, with an unusually solemn expression, was recounting the recent battle against Basiliora to the gathered Thunder Serpent tribe. The Marquis gazed down at the fallen god, or rather, the beast, with indifferent eyes, as though it were only natural. No trace of emotion could be seen. Otilda? As the tribe members responded in awe to each of Deus's words, Alone felt an awkward sense of embarrassment creeping over him. It wasn't that he disliked being praised. But listening to a tale of his own deeds, spun into an epic and recounted in front of an audience, was something his ego wasn't quite thick-skinned enough to endure. Still, he didn't want to interrupt the story everyone seemed so engrossed in, so he began edging away from the group. But the creature climbed the altar again and again to kill the Marquis. Not once, however, did its attacks land. Each time, it was struck down by the Marquis's magic. Alone couldn't help but feel the story was veering away from the actual events. He wanted to correct it. You're the one who dealt with Basiliora, weren't you? But stopped himself. At that moment, Marquis Palacio gazed upon the serpent coiled around the altar and summoned a radiant light that pierced the ashen sky. The sight of him then. Deus's elaborations grew increasingly extravagant, to the point they sounded like verses from some religious scripture. Alone couldn't help but regard him with suspicion. If Deus had simply stuck to the facts, Alone wouldn't have minded. But the exaggerated and almost boastful tone felt as if he were teasing him under the guise of a friend embellishing a story for dramatic effect. Is he doing this on purpose to mock me? The Milky Way sparkled in the night sky above. The following day, Alone decided to leave the Thunder Serpent tribe. Now that Reinhard and Deus had recovered fully, there was no longer any reason to stay. I look forward to meeting you again, honored guest, said the tribe leader with a respectful bow. I shall look forward to it as well, Alone replied with a polite nod. If ever you need assistance, please don't hesitate to call for us. I will. I'll come to help too, definitely. Circle, along with her younger sibling, chimed in. Thank you. After bidding them farewell, Alone and his group set out early in the morning. By midday, they had returned to their camp, grabbed a quick meal, and continued onward, reaching Alone's estate before nightfall. Wow, so this is the air of civilization! Evan exclaimed in delight. Alone, standing beside him, shared the sentiment. Even though it bordered the jungle, the atmosphere felt entirely different. In the jungle, the oppressive humidity clung to their clothes, making it unbearable, but here, it was far more tolerable. I should avoid the jungle as much as possible from now on, Alone thought, savoring the comfort of a restful night after so long. The next day, Alone stood before Caslot, ready to part ways with Deus. While Alone was headed east toward the kingdom of Asteria, Deus needed to travel west, where Caliban awaited him. Well then, until next time, Alone said lightly. Deus bowed his head in response but then paused, asking suddenly, Marquis. Yes? Have I grown stronger? The unexpected question made Alone stop and think for a moment before he nodded. Yes, anyone can see that. You've steadily become stronger. In truth, Deus had likely reached the level of a grand swordmaster. Is that so? That's a relief, Deus replied, a faint smile spreading across his face, the first Alone had seen during this journey. What's he so relieved about? Pondering this, Alone bid Deus farewell and parted ways at Caslot. Shall we head to Tyria now? Yes. Though I'd like to visit the Marquisate first, I need to report back. Anne? Muttering to himself, Alone thought of Cretinia Scion. As the carriage began its journey toward Tyria, Alone's mind was filled with thoughts of what awaited him there. At the time Alone was heading to Tyria. Inside the tent of the temple at the center of the Thunder Serpent tribe. What is it, Chief? Circle, swift as ever, entered the tent in response to the wise Ashgull's summons, tilting her head in inquiry. Circle. Yes, Chief. Could you recall and repeat the words spoken by the honored guest? At the chief's request, Circle nodded confidently. I'll come to the shallow place below the sky. Welcome the dawn with joy, as I will greet it with you. That's what he said, as I mentioned before. But why are you asking about this now? The chief, who had been examining a scroll, looked up. Circle, as you know, our Thunder Serpent tribe reveals sacred words only to those who have earned our gratitude. It ensures that the honored guest can summon our help whenever needed. Yes, of course, I know that. And depending on the extent of the favor received, the specific sacred words vary. Also, to prevent leaks, different opening words are used, Circle replied. The chief nodded in agreement. Exactly. What most of our tribe knows is only the phrase, welcome the dawn with joy. The specific sacred words we shared with the honored guest are recorded solely in this scroll. Chief Ashgull handed the scroll to Circle. Take a look. Who? But I? You have now completed all preparations to fulfill the restrictions placed upon a future chief. Do not worry. Ah. Letting out a soft exclamation, Circle accepted the scroll hesitantly. Verify it. See if the sacred words match those spoken by the guest. Following the chief's instructions, she carefully unrolled the scroll. As she slowly reviewed the ancient record, permitted to be read only by the chief, her gaze fell on the first line. And she held her breath. The very first line didn't just contain the sacred words spoken by the honored guest. Next to those words, a name was inscribed. Bearer of Lightning, Calanan. Unconsciously, Circle murmured the name aloud. It was a title she knew all too well. No, it was impossible not to know it. The Bearer of Lightning, Calanan was the guardian deity who had first protected the Thunder Serpent tribe. Raising her head abruptly, she asked, Chief, does this mean? Yes, the chief confirmed. But to think of him as a god just because of the sacred words, Circle began to voice her doubts. Ashgull chuckled softly. Yes, you're right. Even if we alter the sacred words, it's impossible to guarantee they won't be leaked. Then why? But those sacred words are ones that no one else could possibly know. Why? Think carefully, Circle. Recall the stories of Calanan you've heard since childhood, the ones recorded as unshakable truths on the divine tablets passed down since ancient times. The divine tablets. Circle's mind wandered to the ancient relics that had been with the Thunder Serpent tribe since time immemorial, tablets that, despite no one writing on them, would inscribe the tribe's history every 10 years. Ah. A faint gasp escaped her lips. The story of Bearer of Lightning, Kalanan, that she had read on the divine tablets told of how he had defended the Thunder Serpent tribe against the Black Scourge, meeting his end in the process. The tribe owed him an immeasurable debt of gratitude and had pledged the very first sacred words as a token of their eternal bond. Immediately afterward, Kalanan truly closed his eyes for the final time. In other words, the original sacred words known only to Kalanan himself could never have been leaked. Exactly, Ashgal said. And since only the chief has the authority to view this scroll, a restriction is placed to ensure no one else can divulge the sacred words. Therefore, the only person who could possibly know them is the one who spoke them. The chief's voice echoed quietly in the tent. Circle stood frozen, her mouth slightly agape, lost in thought. Chapter 112. After a prolonged silence, Circle spoke up. Then why didn't he inform us of this fact? Circle murmured, seemingly unable to comprehend, and the chief, struggling to sit in his chair, shook his head. I don't know either. It's like how a small creature can't understand the actions of a great being, we too cannot fathom his intentions. The only certainty is that he has once again saved our tribe. So, we must do what we can in return. What we can do? Circle inquired, to which the chief responded, yes, the only thing we small creatures can do for him is to offer reverence. That's. He smiled brightly, what we, blessed by his grace, must do, and you, as his apostle and future chief, are obliged to carry out. Can you do it? Circle paused briefly at the chief's words, and at the same time, she remembered. She recalled the brilliant white light that spread through the ashen world when dealing with Basiliora. To which Circle responded without hesitation, yes. Alone had travelled from Caslot to Tyria, the capital of the kingdom of Asteria, taking about 2 weeks, with just 1 day left until his arrival. Only 1 day left, my lord, said Evan. So it is, Alone replied. Will you return to the dukedom right after meeting the queen? Of course. Evan spoke near the camp where Alone was practicing magic, causing Alone to sigh. My lord, it seems that your magic is getting stronger lately. Is that so? Yes, I can tell because you've been repeating the same magic over these 2 weeks. Alone, who had been looking at the place he practiced magic until moments ago, thought, yes, it does seem stronger. Seeing the large hole created in the ground, Alone wore a curious expression. Despite using magic regularly for exploration, a sudden increase in its power didn't make sense since his research was focused on efficiency, not strength. Continuing his thoughts, Alone suddenly hypothesized, could it be that my level has increased without any signs? Considering that his magic had intensified due to an increase in level, this seemed plausible. Yet, Alone was increasingly puzzled since he couldn't pinpoint where this level was accumulating. I can't think of any significant events that would increase my level. Level comes from a continuous reverence, meaning it doesn't arise from saving people with magic in isolated incidents but through a sustained, absolute belief. Where could it be accumulating? Deep in thought about this strange situation, Alone recalled Deus's recent deeds, which had more to do with faith than truth. But he quickly dismissed it, no way could that lead to actual faith. Briefly puzzled, he then sighed and pushed the topic aside since levels wasn't crucial at the moment. The real issue is this. Alone looked at the red ring with a snake pattern on his finger. He tentatively infused it with magic. However, the ring, which was supposed to bind Basiliora and respond to magic, remained unresponsive. This shouldn't be happening. Alone's expression remained impassive, but he was internally troubled. Normally, the binding target within the Kalgunia's pact ring should be summoned when magic is infused, although there was a chance it could only appear as an incorporeal spirit due to his insufficient magic power. But even that wasn't a major issue. For this, there was a way to summon without being constrained by magical power. Alone's concern at this moment was whether Basiliora could be summoned without any issues, but strangely, no matter how much magic he poured into it, the summoning did not occur. More precisely, it feels like it's about to happen but then it doesn't. Clearly, his magic was draining significantly, and there was a moment when the magical array seemed to create a spirit, which suggested that the summoning was about to occur. Is it deliberately not appearing? A rational suspicion arose, and he thought, I guess I have to ask Heinkel. He remembered the original owner of the ring, a great mage who had used it more effectively than anyone else. Evan. What is it, my lord? When is the magic conference happening again? Oh, I'm not entirely sure, but if it's as usual, it should be in about a month. That wasn't a short amount of time. Deciding to ask Lian for help once more, Alone then looked at the spirit egg. It's been almost 2 weeks of giving it magic without a sign. During the 2 weeks to Asteria, despite consuming potions, the spirit egg showed no reaction. It might be because my magic power is ridiculously low. Maybe Queen will know something. Initially, it was Cyan who had sent him to the ruins of Malacca, and he thought this as he did so. My lord, have some sweet potatoes. It's chillier than in the jungle, so they taste really good. Really? Captivated by the sweet potatoes, Alone thought, I'll find out tomorrow. He then sat next to Evan and took a bite of the well-roasted sweet potato. Tastes good. Doesn't it? Yes. I should have brought some of that stormvi meat, too. I think the sweet potatoes are dozens of times better. The sweet potatoes tasted just as good on an autumn evening. And the next evening. My lord, we've arrived. Good. Now seeing the familiar landscape of Tyria in the distance, Alone said, let's go straight to the castle. Yes. They began heading towards where Cretania Cyan was, and not long after, oh, have you arrived? In his office, the monarch of Asteria greeted him with a still leisurely expression. Deus Michaelian's sister, Silly Michaelian, was in a very good mood today. There were 2 reasons for her good mood. Her brother, Deus Michaelian, who had been on a business trip, returned today so they could have dinner together, and Silly Michaelian, as a mage, had reached the 1st rank today. Tilda? She couldn't help but laugh. The words her mentor had surprised her with over the past year came to mind, you have talent. Having talent. That statement, coming from a magic mentor who wasn't one to give empty compliments, was very sweet to Silly. After all, her only family, Deus Michaelian, possessed a brilliant talent for the sword. Although she hadn't acted out of jealousy, she had indeed envied him, which made her current validation as a mage all the more delightful. Especially since she had excelled in 4 of the 8 elements, fire, ice, lightning, and wind. I'll boast to my brother. Silly was looking forward to the banquet with Deus. He would be the happiest to hear this news, as it was he who had suggested she learn magic. It must have been because of him that brother suggested I try magic. Silly knew why he was obsessed with magic. It was impossible not to know. Whenever they were together and he started talking about that person, a dinner that should have lasted about 30 minutes would extend late into the evening. Plus, Silly knew that Deus occasionally tried to imitate Marquis Palacio's use of magic in secret. I'm going to surprise him tonight. With high hopes, she looked forward to the evening banquet. When Silly finally met Deus in the evening, she exclaimed, Brother, I've become a mage. Really? He asked. Yes. As expected, a gentle smile spread across Deus's face, and she smiled back at him. I'm truly proud of you, I knew you could do it. Delighted by Deus's genuinely happy reaction, Silly excitedly shared the discussion she had with her mentor today, so anyway, I'm planning to focus on the elements of fire and wind. Deus nodded repeatedly, giving his sister a warm look. Just as an excited Silly was about to speak again, Deus interjected. Wait. Because my mentor said the fire element is easy to learn. What? She paused, realizing something was off. Brother. Up until a moment ago, Deus had been smiling warmly, but now his face had become very stern and serious. Confused by the sudden change, Silly hesitated, but then Deus spoke. Silly, as you know, our Michaelian lineage has been known to inherit the elements of lightning and ice. What? She was even more confused. It was natural to be confused. As far as she knew, there had never been a mage in the Michaelian family, and their parents were just ordinary woodcutters and herbalists. However, Deus continued, Silly, this is an important issue. We need to be clear. Decide now, whether it's fire and wind or ice and lightning. Deus interrupted her with a serious expression, as if truly believing that the Michaelian lineage had historically mastered ice and electric magic. Silly looked at Deus, whose expression was more serious than ever. Tentatively, she started to say, it seems like fire and wind are. Ice, lightning. Ice, lightning. After a moment of silence, she cautiously ventured, ice, lightning. Trying to appease her brother, she finally uttered the words he wanted to hear. Deus then nodded several times, a pleased smile spreading across his face. Yes, that's right. The Michaelian lineage is definitely that. The Michaelian lineage, there's no such thing. Though Silly thought this briefly, she chose not to voice it out loud. It was an odd evening. Chapter 113. First, take a seat. Excuse me. As he nodded slightly and sat in front of her, Cyan smiled as if she had been waiting and offered him a sweet potato. Eat this. Ah, yes. Although he had eaten it yesterday too, he couldn't refuse it since it was offered directly by the queen herself, so he accepted it obediently. But why sweet potatoes again? He certainly wondered. They don't taste good when they're cold. Then, excuse me. However, he filled his mouth easily at her continued urging. Regrettably, he still could not taste the sweet potato. Who could eat comfortably in front of a king? Moreover. No, why only me? Because he was the only one eating the sweet potatoes. If he had something else to eat with others, he might have filled his stomach while being somewhat mindful. But she just stared intently as he ate the sweet potato. It feels like my face is being drilled through. He felt pressured but couldn't ask her to look away. Munch, munch. Munch, munch. In front of the smiling queen, Alone forcibly finished all the sweet potatoes. You eat well. Thank you for the compliment. Should I be happy to be praised for eating? As he kept silent for a while with that brief thought, Cyan nodded with a satisfied expression. Good, now that you've eaten, let's talk. She leaned forward as if to get into the main discussion. What did you find in the ruins? I found the dragon's egg. What is that? Actually, besides its name, I don't know much. But may I ask something? Speak. Do you not know of the dragon's egg, your majesty? That would be expected. There must have been a reason why Alone was sent there. But, of course, I don't know it. Cyan nodded as if it were obvious. Then, why did you order me to visit the ruins? Alone's doubt only deepened. She seemed to gather her thoughts for a moment, then fixed her gaze on Alone. Marquis Palacio, are you well informed about our Cretinia royal family, or more precisely, about the Golden Historian's Eye? Alone nodded. Yes, I am aware. Do you know of its power? It's a power that has been passed down through our royal lineage, accumulating strength. Cyan nodded as if to agree. Yes, just as you said, this Golden Historian's Eye passed down in our Cretinia royal family inherits power. It's almost the same as inheriting the past. She lifted her index finger slightly. Whoosh dash. A small flame appeared on her fingertip. How about that? It's magic. I haven't specifically learned magic. Isn't that surprising? Is it an inherited power? Yes. It's a power bestowed by the second generation, who was a 7th level wizard. But that's not all. Swordsmanship, alchemy, engineering, strategy, I have inherited many other things. She tapped her eyes with her other hand. With these eyes. Leaving behind a remark that it might seem unfair, Cretinia's Cyan extinguished the flame as Alone remained silent. Honestly, Alone couldn't quite grasp what she was trying to say. Cyan continued to speak. But even though it may appear so to others, this power has a side effect. Do you know what it is? I don't really know dash. Alone responded but harbored doubts internally. As far as he knew, there were no documented side effects of the Golden Historian's Eye even in psychedelia. It's the memories. Memories, you say? Yes. The Golden Historian's Eye passes on power to the next generation and their memories as well. This is the first time I'm hearing this. Of course, this fact is known only to the monarchs who have inherited the Golden Historian's Eye. So, you inherit all memories? No, it's not like that. It's rather selective, primarily strong memories and cherished recollections that linger and gradually resurface. Cyan stared intently at Alone's face. Marquis Palacio, you must be curious why I sent you to the ruins of Malacca, aren't you? To be honest, yes. Cyan quickly responded to Alone's nodding. It's because you exist in the memories inherited by the Golden Historian's Eye that I have received. She disclosed such a fact. Marquis Palacio, you. Marquis Palacio, or rather, Alone's face remained expressionless, but his mind was increasingly filled with questions. Am I really remaining in the inherited memories of the Golden Historian's Eye? Yes. Really? It made no sense. The Golden Historian's Eye is supposed to inherit the pasts as she described. Why would I lie? It is an undeniable fact, without a shred of falsehood. Could there be a possibility that you are mistaken? No, there is no such possibility. I would not be driven mad by the numerous memories of the predecessors I possess, because I can recognize that even though I inherit memories, they are memories of others. And this is definitely an inherited memory. Cyan asserted firmly, and Alone asked. Can you tell when this memory was inherited? No, unfortunately, that is not possible. Inherited memories, as I've said, only encompass intense memories or cherished recollections. They do not allow for further inference. They are merely inherited, with no additional information. When, from whom, or why they were inherited. That's what's so fascinating, Marquis Palacio. What exactly are you? The things you mention are very unfamiliar to me. Despite that, you don't seem surprised or perturbed. My facial expressions aren't usually very expressive. Cyan hummed and shrugged, seemingly disappointed. I thought perhaps talking to you might provide some clue, but it seems not. May I inquire about those inherited memories? Cyan paused, recalling the memories. So far, 2 memories have surfaced. One is of a person resembling you having a private audience with a king who possessed the inherited memories, mentioning that something very important was in the ruins of Malacca. The reason she sent Alone to the ruins of Malacca. And another is of you in full ceremonial garb saving the kingdom from a crisis and receiving praise. Hearing this, he still could not grasp any leads. Does the face match mine? Do you think I wouldn't recognize that much? My apologies for the slip of the tongue. Cyan then let out a low exclamation. Ah, and in the inherited memories, you had quite expressive facial expressions. You mean I had expressive facial expressions? Yes, for example. She tapped Alone's lips with her index finger and then pulled them up into a smile. Like this. You mean I was often smiling? You were grinning all the time. As if she had seen something amusing, Cyan laughed along. Alone pondered quietly. May I ask what my rank was in those inherited memories? I'm not sure. Is that so? There is a memory of a conversation, but only your words are remembered, the actual words of the memory's owner are not heard. Afterward, Alone posed several more questions to her, but he could not determine which generation the inherited memory belonged to. After some conversation. Anyway, the reason I sent you to the ruins of Malacca was because of that inherited memory. Thank you for your kindness. Kindness? It's all an investment. An investment? Yes, the you in the inherited memory saved the kingdom, so I thought you could be of help this time too. That may not be me. Is that so? Cyan rested her chin on her hand and smirked slightly. In the end, we haven't learned anything new about these peculiarly inherited memories. I apologize. No need. It was quite interesting. I'll call you again if something else comes to mind. Do the memories surface gradually? Mostly, yes. Since inheriting them, they come to mind suddenly, or sometimes when there's a strong shock similar to the past. Anyway, Tilda. See you later, I'm getting sleepy now. With those words, she dismissed him, and Alone bowed slightly before leaving her office. A few days later. Marquis. What is it? You've been deep in thought ever since you returned from the castle. What happened? Evan asked while driving the carriage, and Alone shook his head. It's nothing serious. If it's not serious, why have you been pondering for days? Strictly speaking, I'm not pondering, it's more like spacing out over a few days. Evan's languid voice trailed off as Alone once again looked out at the passing forest. What filled his mind was the memory inherited through the Golden Historian's eye that he had heard from the Queen a few days ago. It doesn't make sense, no matter how much I think about it. As he had thought several times, the Golden Historian's eye is a power that inherits the past. It doesn't have the power to predict the future. If such a power existed, Cyan wouldn't have died protecting a crumbling kingdom, and Alone should have known about that setup. Thus, the memories inherited through the Golden Historian's eye are likely from the past. What he couldn't understand was someone with exactly the same face and voice as me. Except for the expressive face, the man in the memories looked exactly like him. An ancestor. The thought that he could be a descendant of the Palacio family occurred to him, but even so, it was strange. The ruins of Malacca haven't been discovered for long. As far as he knew, the ruins of Malacca were still relatively newly revealed at this point, with only a year left before the original story starts. Meaning, it wasn't a memory from a distant past. 100 years ago, a jungle was destroyed, and the documents being studied were all lost. It's possible that the ruins of Malacca were discovered before that time, and the memories from then were inherited. But it still doesn't add up. Despite such thoughts, there were too many unresolved issues, and Alone pondered. Hudash? With a light sigh, he ended his contemplation. The memories provided by the golden historians were too limited, making speculation essentially pointless. Instead, Alone brought up his last question. A question that remained unanswered since his meeting with Cretinia Sion. Why is she so kind to me? Logically, the memories of the golden historians should reflect the past. That means, the man in the ceremonial garb in the memory of succession is not Alone but someone who looks like him, which would have been a logical deduction for her too. Yet, she showed kindness to him because he looked like the man who saved the nation. That means, she must be convinced that the man in the inherited memories is Alone. And there was no reason to tell me to go to the ruins of Malacca. Therefore, what could it be? Alone was left to continue pondering that the Queen might be hiding something. Meanwhile, in the office at the Asteria Castle. You seem very pensive lately, Your Majesty. Sion, who had been staring blankly out the window, turned at her secretary's comment. Does it appear so? Yes. Especially since you met Marquis Palacio, it seems even more so. May I dare ask why? Don't worry about it. It's not a serious concern at all. Rather, it's an interesting one. Interesting, you say? Sion nodded slightly. Yes, very interesting. In many ways. A small smile played on her lips as she murmured cryptically. Chapter 114. Have we lost contact with the subjects? Yes. In the office of Duke Comelin. Upon the report from the Dark Elf, he calmly asked, what was the last report before the communication was cut off? The last was about locating the whereabouts of Marquis Palacio. Couldn't even make a proper assessment. I apologize. The Dark Elf bowed deeply. Though Duke Comelin was aware that the current situation was not the fault of the one before him, he suddenly remembered what a man dressed in a black sanctified robe had said. To be wary of Marquis Palacio, that warning. Duke Comelin kept looking at the bowed Dark Elf in silence for a while before breaking the quiet. Well, it's all right. It was only meant to gauge the forces using those whose lifespans aren't long anyway. Is that all right? Our goal is not to deal with Marquis Palacio. We only intended to handle him because he has been continuously obstructing our cause. However, the cost shouldn't exceed the benefit. Losing the dragon's egg delayed our cause, but it doesn't mean our plans have fallen apart. I will bear that in mind. Unable to delay further due to the bothersome thorn, how much longer until the masquerade? Only 2 weeks left. Start preparing the organizations for externalization, timed for the masquerade in 2 weeks. I will obey. The Dark Elf bowed once more and then vanished, leaving Duke Comelin alone in his office. The cause must be fulfilled, by any means necessary. Muttering to himself, it must be accomplished. It is the only way to save this world, he affirmed quietly to himself. With a breath held tight, a clear madness shone in his eyes once again raised. Alone returned to Palacio's residence about a week later. After his arrival, his most important task was to rest. Despite not neglecting his magical studies even then, the break at the mansion was genuinely sweet relief after months of hectic travel. However, he couldn't purely enjoy leisure throughout that week. This seems tougher than expected. Indeed. Evan, who had started assisting in his tasks, remarked. What they were looking at was a document about the current state of Marquis Palacio's fief. The financial situation isn't bad, but it's not good either. That's true. The financial state of the fief was mediocre. In fact, strictly speaking, it was more on the poor side. But maybe that's to be expected? Our fief hardly has a source of income, except when it thrived on underworld money even at its best. It's still the same now, isn't it? What do you mean? It's essentially being covered by money coming in from the faction. Evan pointed to a part of the document. That's true. Alone inwardly felt extremely troubled. Because he was just about managing to balance the entire fief with the finances of the ducal estate. On the contrary, if limited to the ducal estate's financial status, it was quite affluent. This was because of the many treasures he had received as compensation while wandering outside his domain. However, that was not a steady income. It seems necessary to create some safe revenue mechanisms. realizing the need to brainstorm further. Even though the finances of the ducal house are currently stable, without a steady source of income, the end is inevitable, and it will eventually run out. Should I create some local product when money comes in, like a specialty item? Alone was lost in thought for a while, then soon closed the thick paper documents and asked, "Do we have any specialty products in our territory?" "A specialty product?" "Yes." "Drugs." "Why is that coming up suddenly?" "No, drugs used to be the specialty product of the Count house." "Was it that significant?" "There was nothing else besides that." Alone nodded with a peculiar expression. Yes, the Palacio family had long been deeply involved in the underworld of Asteria, one of its dark secrets. "Is there really nothing else?" "I suppose not. There really isn't anything around here that could be called a specialty." "Isn't having nothing a bit concerning?" Briefly pondering. Should I handle other matters first? Deciding to prioritize other piled-up work and think about the development of the territory. And I should reply to the letters. Starting to open and read one by one the 3 letters from Yusha that had accumulated during his absence. The first letter was a light greeting, mentioning the recent situations of Rhine and Sealrang. The second letter was similar to the first, a light greeting with stories about Raiden. Thanks to Evan's regular updates, Alone was somewhat aware of Raiden's news. Discovered an amazing artifact. Come to think of it, I haven't heard rumors about Raiden from outside recently. Suddenly such a thought occurred. Well, actually, no news from a pirate is good news. It was almost certain that if news updated, it would likely be about a bounty increase. So, Alone felt a small satisfaction with Raiden's lack of news as he unfolded the last letter. Fortunately, after confirming it was also a greeting letter, he soon started writing a reply. Having finished, it was about a page long. However, considering the frequency of incoming letters compared to my replies, maybe I should write a bit longer. Aiming to balance things out a bit more than usual, he started writing a longer content. Soon after recounting his recent visit to the jungle and pondering what specialty product to determine for the Marquis house's small daily matters. Checking the 3-page-long letter, he smiled proudly to himself. After entrusting the letter to Evan, he turned his gaze outside the window. Unlike the perennially humid climate of the jungle, Asteria was now approaching winter, with red maple leaves gradually falling. Late autumn was already passing. As time passed, the maples disappeared and full winter arrived. It's time to move. The Magic Academy. Yes. As soon as Alone had the chance to participate in the Magic Academy again through Cyan, he immediately began preparations to head there. But, my lord, are you moving already? I understand there's still quite some time until the Magic Academy starts. Even if we start leisurely from now, we'll have plenty of time. Evan asked while preparing. Of course, he was right. However, Alone's purpose in attending this academy was actually to meet Heinkel. There's no problem in going early, right? Well, that's true. Evan agreed and naturally turned his gaze to one side and asked, "Are you taking this black egg?" The black egg placed on one side of the office. There had been no particular change, but it had grown a bit bigger than before. Alone pondered for a moment and then nodded. "Let's take it." They immediately started heading to the Magic Academy. It was about 2 weeks after leaving the ducal estate that Alone arrived at the central tower where the Magic Academy was being held. Every time I see this, I can only marvel. Especially coming in the evening seems to make it feel even more so. I think so too. Evan and Alone both nodded in admiration, looking at the central tower. Actually, the tower, rising high into the sky with its back turned to the blue moon, looked even more majestic at night than during the day. It was a scene that seemed as if it came straight out of a fantasy illustration. Indeed, the sight is more impressive at night. With that thought, Alone couldn't take his eyes off the tower for a while, until they finally arrived at the central tower. They parked the carriage to one side and walked inside. There. Ah, Marquis Palacio. He naturally heard someone calling his name. Alone looked at the man with a puzzled expression, but it was brief. You might not remember, but we met once before at a conference. Ah. He nodded slightly, recalling the memory. Milan, was it? It's an honor that you remember my name. An honor? Well, anyway, it's been a while. Yes, it has been. While Milan greeted him, Alone looked around. Despite it being before the start of the magic conference, quite a few magicians were already there. It seems there are many magicians here, even though the conference hasn't started yet. Understanding Alone's query, Milan explained. Ah, that's because the Tower Masters are participating this time. The Tower Masters? Yes. Both the Blue Tower Master and the Red Tower Master are participating in this conference. I heard they will even give a brief lecture tomorrow. It made sense now why so many magicians had gathered already. If the Tower Masters were participating, their lectures would be immensely beneficial for the magicians. Actually, I came to attend the lecture, too. Alone also had the intention not only to ask Heinkel about the ring but also to gain some knowledge from him. Although he was dealing with challenges using the Babylonian syntax, self-imposed restrictions, and feats of great strength, he was, frankly speaking, only a fourth-tier magician by now. Ah, by the way, congratulations. Suddenly, Milan offered his congratulations. Congratulations? Yes. What are you congratulating me for? Alone asked with a puzzled expression, but Milan smiled knowingly. There's no need to pretend. Most of the magicians here already know. No, really, what are you talking about? Alone looked at him blankly, but Milan kept smiling. I've already heard the rumor that the Blue Tower Master has officially approved your engagement with the Deputy Tower Master. Congratulations, Marquis. And with that? What? For a brief moment, the usually unchanging face of Alone showed a flicker of surprise, his eyes widening in disbelief.